A lot of people knew this was a possibility, but I don't think a lot of people thought that it was actually going to happen. I mean, let's be perfectly honest with each other. Jared Anderson has been the biggest, most highly touted heavyweight American prospect since Deontay Wilder. I mean, and I remember when Deontay Wilder was just running through the ranks, right? Back before the trilogy with Tyson Fury, back before what we just saw with Zhang and everything that's come from that. I remember when he was out there starching people, man. He was coming out there and he had like this legendary power, man. He was coming out there like a superhero and he was just putting it on dudes, right? And that was coming from when we saw him in the Olympics when, I mean, it was hard to be more rusty than dude. It was hard to have more of just a unrefined, raw, sometimes kind of hard to watch skill set than Deontay Wilder. But he had that power, he had that eraser, and it just completely hyped up the American heavyweight division. Everybody wanted to see him. We all know how that turned out. But lo and behold, now we got Jared Anderson, right? And he's out here and he's being highly touted, completely different type of fighter, right? We're not out there watching him for these crazy knockouts. We're not seeing him for this crazy power, although he is scoring knockouts. But, he's more of this fast, athletic, fleet-footed type fighter. He's landing these combinations. He's getting in little spots and getting his power off. But we've seen that he's had some flaws. We've seen the technical flaws. We've seen him get caught more than a few times. We see the way he pulls back from shots. We see how he's kind of up straight with his chin up at times. We see these little things, right? And people have talked about him. So going into this fight, there was a certain segment of people who were a little bit surprised. They were like, man, I'm a little bit surprised he took this fight with Bakole because Bakole's no joke. He's got, anvils in his hands. Like this dude's in a cartoon character with Wile E. Coyote, right? I mean, he can just go in there. He can punch through a brick wall. So it was always interesting to see how this one was going to turn out. Of course, in the buildup, Jared Anderson is saying, look, it's no big deal. It doesn't matter how hard he can hit. This dude doesn't have any athletic talent. He's right there. He's in front of me. He's not going to be moving. He's there to be hit. Eddie Hearn's taunting him at the press conference. He said told him he's going to get knocked out. Told him the only way he's going to be able to beat Bakole is if he's the real deal. All of that makes sense. All of that makes a lot of sense. Then this first round starts. And as soon as the first round started, I was a little bit concerned. Because you got Bakole standing there and he's just playing the role of the immovable object and he has just got that right hand cocked. He is just sitting there and he is just ready. He's not trying to avoid any body shots. He doesn't want to get himself out of position. He's not really trying to block things all that much. Little movements here and there, but he's just sitting there and he's got that right hand cocked. And then as he starts to throw punches, I could instantly tell this dude had really good muscle control. Like his hands are faster than I thought they were and really more than you want them to be if you're trying to avoid him on the end. He's long, he's tall, dude's super big at like 300 pounds. He's got real true power in it. And the way he was able to get those shots off, man, I think, that's something that wasn't really talked about, but it's the fact that they were arm punches, okay? And the majority of guys, you see them throw arm punches, they don't got any power behind them. But he was able to throw arm punches and he was able to have real power behind him. That's number one because of how hard he hits. But it was the way in which he threw those arm punches. You could tell that he had real muscle control and that those arm punches, he didn't have to loop them. They weren't slow. They were really crisp. They were right on the money. They had power behind them. And he didn't have to move his body at all. He didn't have to turn at all. And it makes it so dangerous because he's able to get those shots off with no tell. And by the fact that he had quick hands, and the reach, it was bad. It was bad. I could tell that it was going to be problematic. And then lo and behold, we get there at the end of the first round. Jared Anderson is starting to feel himself get into a little bit of a rhythm. He starts trying to open up and he's just at this horrible position, tries to open up with his left hand, and Bakole just catches him with this clean little short right uppercut, follows him up with a few shots, puts him down. And you could tell when Jared Anderson got up from that shot, man, you could tell that he was surprised. He was worried. He was probably a little bit embarrassed because he had been talking about everything he was going to do. And all of a sudden, he doesn't even make it out of the first round without getting sat down. So it was a tough spot to be in, I imagine. He comes out and we see him trying to build a little bit. We see him trying to do some things over the course of the fight, over the course of the next round. And don't get me wrong, here and there, he was able to get some shots off. He was able to go to the body. He was able to get some things off upstairs. He was able to land some good shots. But the remainder of that fight, the one thing that I remember the most, the thing that stands out in my mind the most, was that the man couldn't find his distance. And there were so many times throughout this fight where he would look like he was trying to reset, right? Whether it was after an exchange, a single shot, whatever the case may be, something happened and he was trying to reset. And usually you'll see him catch like a half circle. He'll try to go out and come back in. Whatever the case may be, you see fighters reset constantly during fights. There's nothing abnormal about it. But 99% of the time when a fighter resets, he resets at a position that's out of range for both him and his opponent, and then they'll work back into range. Totally normal, happens all the time. But almost every time I saw Jared Anderson trying to reset, he was getting to a position where he was out of range. He couldn't attack his opponent, but Bakole was still in range. And that's like the worst place in the world that you could possibly be, because you're at a position where you need to step. You need to take at least a half step to hit your opponent, and all your opponent has to do is fire off a shot. Maybe he's got to lean forward a little bit to reach you, but he doesn't have to take a step. And it puts you at such a defensive disadvantage, because you have to react with a defensive movement to a fighter who only has to throw a punch. And your arm muscles are so small, you're able to get punches off really quickly relative to how somebody reacting is able to move their entire upper body or foot movement or whatever it is. So horrible position to be in. And almost every single time we saw Jared Anderson start to reset and he would be in that spot, Bakole would start to light him up with punches. And they were only arm punches, but you saw Jared Anderson's head just moving all over the place throughout this fight, right? He's getting caught. And usually when you see a guy not able to eat shots like this, when his head starts to rattle around, horrible sign. Horrible sign usually when you see a guy's head start to move that much, right? Because his neck muscles aren't slowing anything down. I mean, he's just over there. He's just getting ping-ponged around in that regard. And you would watch him, and Jared Anderson, he looked as though he was taking the shots for the most part. And he was firing back. He was doing this and that. But that fifth round there came, man, and it was the exact same type of sequence again, but it was just too much. It added up, put him down. Then he was able to get, Bakole was able to finish him off with a series of shots shortly thereafter. And, it reminded me of the analogy of the little girl tying her shoe, leaning up against the brick wall and falling down. And basically what it is imagine you've got a brick wall that's standing up. And you got a grown man coming over there every day with a sledgehammer, and he smashes on that wall 2 or 3 times. And for the most part, and he's doing it every day for the course of, months, a year, whatever the case may be. And for the most part, nothing really seems like it matters. Little bits and chunks seem to fly off, and little dents and cracks and whatever it may be here and there as he's hitting it with that sledgehammer. And then one day, after that's done, a little girl comes over and she leans up against the wall to tie her shoe. And as she leans up against the wall to tie her shoe, the wall falls down. Now, do we look at that scenario and say that little girl knocked that wall down? In essence, that's what we would say, because that was the specific event that led to that wall falling down. But in reality, it was the accumulation over all that time of that grown man pounding on it with a sledgehammer. And that's really what we saw with this fight with Jared Anderson and Bakole, right? He got him out of there in the 5th round, but it wasn't an individual shot in the 5th round that did so much damage that it put him down. It was the fact that he had just been landing a bunch of clean shots from a guy who has just got hammers, and he was able, and those added up, and eventually when those shots in the 5th round came, it was too much and he put him down. The one other thing that I want to say that really stood out to me during this fight was Jared Anderson's lack of ability to successfully clinch. I mean, multiple times throughout this fight, I saw this dude trying to clinch because he was in a position that he knew was a bad spot to be in, and he was trying to clinch so that his opponent wouldn't be able to land those punches on him. And dude, he was moving slow. He was moving awkward. He was coming in at the wrong height and the wrong angles. All Bakole was able to disengage so easily, man. And he was able to just step back and get a shot. It was kind of surprising. It was kind of surprising that he wasn't able to successfully clinch. And look, I don't want to read too much into it, although there is a lot there to read. And the reason for that is we know that he got lit up in the 1st round, and we knew that he was already hurt, and we knew that at that point he's already doing everything from a diminished capacity. So I don't want to look at it and say, it's like looking at a guy who's just super sloppy drunk and he can't walk a straight line, and you're like, oh bro, you're a grown man and you can't walk a straight line. It's like, well, clearly it's because the man's under the influence. So I'm looking at here and it's like he's making poor decisions throughout the fight and bad things are happening, and it's like, well, clearly he got really hurt in the 1st round. But the problem with trying to dismiss everything with being hurt in the 1st round is that we've seen a lot of these same mistakes throughout the course of his career. The way he's pulling back from shots, the decisions he's making on the inside, the inability for him to correctly gauge this distance. I don't know, man. I'll tell you what, I saw a lot of these problems beforehand, and I wanted to believe that once he hooked up with Sugar Hill, that we were going to start to see a change. We were going to start to see something in this fight that really indicated that he was going to start to put all these pieces together. But now he couldn't be in a worse position. Okay, because now that's all going to be with him mentally as far as what happened here, right? He knows what those shots felt like. This man's never been knocked out before. He didn't get knocked out cold, but he never got beat to the point where the referee had to stop a fight. This is a brand new experience, 1st time for him. He's still a young guy, and let's not forget that he never really truly had his heart in this. He said it himself. Right? Remember, we saw the interview back with Roy Jones back leading into his fight last year in Ohio with the homecoming event. And he really said, he's like, I'm just doing this for the time being. I'm doing it because I'm really good at it. I'm doing it because I can make money and provide and all of these types of things. But this isn't like really truly a passion and a love for me. I'm going to do what I need to do. And then I'm gone. I'm out. I'm riding off into the sunset. I'm not going to make this a lifetime choice. And a lot of people didn't like to hear that. I look at it far different. It's like, let the man do what he wants to do, right? But But my problem with something like that is only if it'll translate into something in the ring. And this is a scenario where I wonder, man, this is a scenario where it makes me think, because he goes out there, now he's got a loss on his record. So when you look at it, his entire career trajectory is going to be changed. He's not on some undefeated pass straight shot for the title type thing anymore. He went out there and now he's got to overcome this loss. So from a career perspective, from a financial perspective, from a legacy, getting the belt, all that kind of stuff, all of that has been negatively impacted by this loss. On top of that, you look at it and you say, what's he going to feel like in the ring when he gets caught with another big shot? Because every time he got caught with big shots in the past and we saw him get hurt, he was able to get through it. So in his mind, he's thinking it doesn't really matter that much if I get caught with a big shot. I'm going to be able to find a way to get through it. I always have in the past. Logical thing to think. But now he's in a scenario where that's not the truth. Now he's in a scenario where he stepped up his competition, best fighter he ever fought, and that dude stops him in the 5th round, and Jared Anderson was really never in control of the fight at any point. How's that going to react when he's going forward? How's that going to react in the next fight if he gets hurt again? How's that going to react as far as his motivation? Does he still have the motivation after going through that to still get in there for something that he doesn't love and potentially have to go through it again? Like, dude, it's going to be fascinating to see how he rebounds from this. The man's got a lot of potential. The man has got a bright future, but this is not a great spot to be in. You know, this is a spot to be in that a lot of people have to go through at some point, and it's really what's going to determine the remainder of his career. Because if mentally he just decides, like, it is what it is, I'm going through it, I'm going to bounce back, I'm going to be in the gym, I'm going to dedicate myself, I'm going to use this as a learning opportunity, man, he can skyrocket. But if he just kind of takes it, keeps it moving, tries to keep grinding, thinks, you know, maybe it wasn't really my fault. It was just, you know, a bad scenario, a bad situation. Everybody gets caught now and then. That type of a thing. It's going to be a tough one, man. It's going to be tough, particularly as the grind continues. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with him. Like I said, he's still young too. He's got so much potential and there's so much time and opportunity to bounce back. It'll be interesting to see what happens. So let me know what you guys think. Did you see something like this happening? Was it completely out of left field for you? What do you think is going to be next for Jared Anderson? And what do you think is going to be next for Bakole? I mean, he comes out there and he upsets the apple cart on some really young, hot prospect. Is he going to have a short path to getting a really big name fight now? Let me know what you guys think.